Good morning, house guests. Come on in for some piping hot tea and some, I don't even know, I was going to call it breadcrumb cake. Well, Bryan Freedman has left us some breadcrumbs in his latest TMZ interview. Check this out. He dropped breadcrumbs without dropping the breadcrumbs, so I'm hoping that he escapes Blake's sanctions, which I feel are coming based off of this interview. It's quite interesting. I encourage everyone to go on TMZ and to watch Angry Two Men. It has Bryan Freedman. It has Harvey Levin, who is in charge of TMZ or is one of the producers in TMZ. I believe he's a lawyer, along with Mark Garokulos, who I believe is another lawyer. And then, of course, Bryan Freedman. Bryan Freedman generally is talking about TMZ and how they're inaccurately reporting. And it was really interesting from a PR/paparazzi perspective to see what TMZ's side was as far as reporting and receiving tips and doing research. They did admit that they got their headline wrong about the deadline. And it was interesting because Harvey said, it was either Harvey or Mark said that what probably happened, and I believe it was Mark. Mark said what probably happened is one of their late night producers probably just saw it and copied it. And Harvey Levin was like, yeah, a lot of the times that happens. We see a headline and we just copy it, and sometimes people just don't do their research. Not saying that I personally not saying that TMZ does that or any other news articles do that, but that was mentioned in this interview that everybody should go watch. Second, shout out to that one person who's watching me at 2 a.m. Thank you so much. We just had a fire alarm, so I'm wide awake and excited. So I timestamped, or I tried to timestamp some of these interesting quotes that was mentioned. So at the 5-minute 11 mark in this interview, Mark Garokulos, not Bryan Freedman, says, the idea that was put out there, and I know that this is talk about spin that came from the Blake Lively camp. So Mark Garokulos specifically mentioned the Blake Lively camp, that there was a deadline that was missed, trying to portray this as some kind of legal victory. Did you see what just happened there? It wasn't Bryan Freedman saying that Blake Lively's camp was releasing information. Another party said it. Interesting legal take or tactic so that he doesn't get sanctioned. He didn't say it. Somebody else did. Now, as we go further into this interview, Harvey Levin at the 5:47 mark or around that in this interview states, but everything I've seen, all of those claims have basically been debunked. So did TMZ just call out Blake Lively and was like what we're all thinking over here? Stuff that has come out hasn't really shown that Blake Lively's statements have, maybe she misremembered. I'm going to say she misremembered so I don't get sued. Maybe she misremembered what actually happened. But Harvey Levin, thank you for calling it out. But everything I've seen, all of those claims have basically been debunked. Why isn't this on TMZ TV, on the actual TV? Why is this only on YouTube? It's driving me crazy, but it was juicy. Now, Harvey Levin also goes on, and I'm very glad that it kind of looked like everybody was helping each other out, if you know what I mean, and covering each other, which is really cool. Again, please see this interview. There's so many breadcrumbs in here. But at the 6 minute and 2 second mark, Harvey, I believe Harvey said this, TMZ guy. If Bryan is successful, if Baldoni is successful, then the turnaround, the consequences at this point is unbelievable. So, in my theory, they're setting up kind of like this stage that they believe that there's a pretty good chance that Wayfair and Baldoni are going to win this whole thing against Blake. My opinion only. You can go ahead and sue me. I don't make any money anyways. And then at the another interesting thing, and this is where I really feel like the big breadcrumbs were at, the 15-minute, 40-second mark in this interview. Listen to this. So, I should have just marked it. So at the 15-minute mark and 40-second mark, Bryan Freedman and Harvey Levin are locked into a little debate about accurate reporting. If you get a tip, should you research that tip, right? Now, there's a little bit of talking over of people at this point, but Mark Galakalos, I'm butchering his name, I'm so sorry, makes a very good point. As Bryan Freedman said to Harvey, you would not publish anything that you knew would not be true. Something along those lines. Look at the 15-minute, 40-second mark. He clearly defines and shouts that out to TMZ, and TMZ agrees with him. Yes, we wouldn't, publish anything that we didn't check out. TMZ admits that they have a legal department. And TMZ admits that some other publications will just take tips and automatically, well, maybe not automatically, not do their due diligence and just publish them, and they may be completely false. Now, to be fair with the pro Blake Lively group, Harvey Levin did set up a scenario or conversation where they brought up unclean hands. And I think that this is where they were trying to central their arguments of what's going to happen in court. If Blake Lively brings up unclean hands because Justin Baldoni is doing a smear campaign, and then Justin Baldoni is like, hey, we're, you're doing a smear campaign. So it's like smear campaign versus smear campaign. Hey, Joe, I just saw the comments. Thank you for joining me at the midnight hour. I hope you're good. Thank you for being a follower. But Joe, are you with me? Do you get what I'm understand? Like, I really feel like they're setting up like this scenario in court where it's going to be like, oh, it's a smear campaign versus a smear campaign. Who's going to come out first? However, what I do think is going to happen is Bryan Freedman came back and said, yeah, but you didn't publish things that you knew were not true. And as they were discussing this, Mark G said it sounded like Bryan Freedman gave the definition of malice. Go look it up somewhere across those lines. But he mentioned that. And I tried to pull it up in the little transcript because my hearing was bad. But TMZ did not publish that in their transcript, which I think was a good move on TMZ's part and protecting Bryan Freedman from sanctions, because can you imagine that? Bryan Freedman said that there was malice on TV concerning the Blake Lively camp. I can just see the headlines right now. So I think this whole interview, this whole 39-minute interview was just dropping of the breadcrumbs and really just putting the hammer to Blake Lively. Harvey did mention that the Justy Baldoni parties were winning with the TikTok group. So obviously TMZ is watching social media as well. as legacy media, right? And at point 18 minutes and 25, they're talking about how in 6 months they're going to have a verdict, which tells me that there is no way that they are going to let Blake Lively settle. TMZ has already called out Blake in this interview, saying that most of her claims have seemed to be debunked. You know, they want a jury verdict to clear all of their names. And really, I think when the pressure is getting up and we're getting closer to trial, I really do believe that Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds are going to want to settle this because there's too many secrets in this pot and there's way too much liability on both of them. And if you look at Ryan Reynolds stock, it is going down and it's missed its earnings, whatever. A side note that I just thought that was really interesting. I really wanted to see, you know, the dips and things like that because it doesn't look like Ryan Reynolds stock is doing that great. And if that has to do with the Lively case, then oh well. And again, TMZ has also pointed out that this case has hurt both Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds. Yes, I'm glad that Bryan Freedman called out Harvey. And you know what? It wasn't even a call out. It was a debate. It was like, hey, TMZ, let me hold your feet to the fire. You wouldn't publish anything that you knew that was not true. And I'm really glad that they spent half of this interview covering that. Let me see if I have any more good timestamps for you guys or for you, Joe. There was a discussion about unclean hands, like I previously said. It was at the 2015 mark. And Harvey was discussing how publicists will call him up and they'll get tips. And I'm sure they get thousands of tips. If you guys must know, I did send that last video to TMZ like a crazy person. Maybe that's why they made this interview. Don't know. But anyways, nice thought, right? But they're saying that they get all of these tips and some of them are far or crazy. But TMZ is still standing firm that they still have to vet them before they publish anything, right away. And Bryan Freedman says, or I think it was Bryan Freedman, it says, but if you know that to be true, when a publicist calls you up, you're going to try to verify that. And now, one thing that TMZ did say, and I was a little disappointed, but I did think that they were covering their bottoms because they had just had this problem with the false reporting and them getting called out on it, is Harvey Levin said has to be by a case basis. So is he saying TMZ is good in their reporting most of the time, and sometimes they'll publish things on a whim like they just did with this deadline thing? Or are they saying other publications will just do their research on one side, ask for a comment, and then publish it because they want clicks? Because that's also what Harvey Levin had mentioned, is that most of the time these publications are going for clicks and not the truth. So in my crazy tin hat theory, I think that Wayfair has proof that Blake Lively's camp knew their allegations were false, disregarded the truth anyways, and were just hell-bent on publishing this essential smear campaign for whatever reason. I still don't really know the reason. They say it was to take over the film, and maybe that's true, but why would you want 2 years back? It doesn't make sense. And who was it? Not it wasn't not Without a Crystal Ball had done a video on Mountain, which is Ryan Reynolds' company, and she had done a lot of research, and she hypothesized that the reason why this movie was going to be taken over by Blake was because of the stock and the announcement of the stock. You know, like, hey, we're this powerhouse couple, we're rising stars, and we're a powerhouse. I am the chief creative officer, which is a beautiful title. I don't know what that means, but without a crystal ball, was saying that there was just going to be this big vibrato where it was going to maybe pedestal Blake, and they were going to be this power couple, like the next power couple. I don't even know who the power couple is in Hollywood who has but I guess that was the goal. And when this lawsuit came out, everything just kind of tumbled on Ryan Reynolds' end. Maybe not necessarily on Blake's, because even though she did have a successful mocktail, she had a very successful mocktail. She was getting into the UK market with the British Airways. She was doing her thing. It had recently been released in Carnival. So she was building her brand, which was amazing to see. If she didn't include it with her movie, like, I feel like if she just kept everything separate, she could have been the Martha Stewart of mocktails, because who drinks mocktails, you know? But during the pandemic, it was really, really popular, and she took that market, and props to her. I do have to say props to her. But then she decided to destroy everything, just like she decided to destroy her hair care line by partnering with Target. I don't necessarily think it was the marketing. I think the product was bad, just based off of the reviews. Her marketing of her hair care product was bad. And then the fact that she decided to partner with Target, who was laying off everybody, closing stores, and then they lost their CEO to that whole DEI thing, and then they had that boycott. I just think it was like a very bad time for Blake to place her product there, and her reputation in Target versus a community who felt very wronged and discriminated against. So Blackface Barbie didn't do well when there was a community who's actively boycotting Target because they felt discriminated against. So maybe she just picks duds, and she got lucky with Wayfair, they gave her a bone, literally. They really gave her a bone, just like they gave Claire Ayub a bone. And then what happened? It just disintegrated against. So that's my live. Thank you guys for joining me. Where are you guys from, and what time is it? I'm on Pacific Coast time in the US, and it's 3 o'clock in the morning, witching hour, which is convenient because my smoke detector's been off. Joe says it may have hurt them both, but they're going to be fine because they have half the Hollywood supporting them. Now, if this gets crazier than it already is, do you think they're going to be dropped by everyone? I definitely think Blake will be dropped if she's not in a Ryan Reynolds produced movie. I think she already has that string of movies that nobody wants to watch, and I think there's enough of backlash, but I think studios are going to take notice because, one, she's litigious. So even though she's litigious, I think studios are going to have a problem insuring her, because if she's known to make false statements, she could make a false statement against another studio. The insurance is going to have to cough off that money, either in settlement or attorney's fees, or both, to my knowledge. I know nothing, but I think that's really going to hurt her, because if you're going to raise your costs for a controversial star in your movie, I don't think that would be cost effective. Do you guys think that? I just think from an insurance standpoint, it's like insuring a driver who's crashed, how many complaints? They just 15. They crashed 15 times. Who's going to insure that? Just my opinion. No offense, Blake. Go back to your mocktail line. Netherlands, that is super cool. That is super cool. I always wanted to travel there. But yeah, Ryan Reynolds, think I think he's got a hold on Hollywood, and he did that by Deadpool. And I want to think that Hollywood is looking for a reason to dump him, but he might be like too powerful. Now, I've heard from Without a Crystal Ball that Mountain is going through a intellectual property lawsuit where they're being accused of using somebody else's software or somebody else's, I believe it's software for advertising or something like that. They're being accused of copying it, and there's supposedly a copyright or protecting work on this other product. And this company, who wasn't successful in the advertising or the whatever of their product, but was successful in suing everybody over their product and usage, I think they might be going after Mountain, and it might be really, really bad for them. But depending on how that company is set up, Ryan Reynolds might just be too big to fail. And part of me thinks the movie thing that he's coming out with all these new movies is because he's just trying to pay for legal fees, and then he's just going to go and be a chief creative officer for Mountain and, do that. But yeah, I think Ryan Reynolds in himself is too big to fail. What do you guys think? Do you guys think that Ryan Reynolds would fail? I mean, I wouldn't, he is getting more marketing contracts too. So I just don't know. But what do you guys think about Jenna Redfield? Do you think that she should be subpoenaed in this whole thing? Because I don't think she's been deposed. What do you guys think? And if we can, my other thing is, I don't know if you guys seen Flossom Talk's latest video on, oh God, what is his name? Fadiq? What is his first name? Oh, and I Instagrammed him too to see if I could do an interview. But I feel that Wayfair is going to need all of their ammunition, and this photographer that Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds went after in Canada, I think he has a lot of information, and I think he could be really useful as like a pattern witness. So like, I don't know if you guys followed the Amber Heard and Johnny Depp trial, but there's this woman who popped out from like years later or before, but she was like a pattern witness. Like, she was like, yeah, I saw Amber Heard fighting in the airport and I had to do this and that. And, I wasn't called by Johnny Depp's team. I called them and I got to testify against Amber Heard. So if that can happen, then I think they should bring up that photographer from Canada who has all the receipts about the wrong police reports and all this other drama. You have to check out this. You have to check out this interview. Make it go viral because it's such good information and it's such good history of what they do. Looking at yeah, and I'm hoping that he will go on some other shows and just talk about their harassment. And honestly, if you look at the PR strategy that Tag did, none of those PR strategies were lies. In fact, they were kind of current. Wasn't there like a TikToker who got berated or verbally abused or chased by Blake Lively at a Texas hotel? Like, this person took a photo of Blake like in public, and then Blake saw it and got mad and went after her, and then the person said that Blake sent even her security team against her. Like, how is that a lie? You know, versus what Blake says in her complaint, where she was nearly nude, but yet everybody else says that she was wearing black shorts, or briefs, I'm sorry, a prosthetic, a hospital gown, you know, and whatever. So, yeah. He mentioned RR has the mayor and the police in his pocket. Yes. And did you also hear that Blake Lively backstabbed Ryan Reynolds in that interview? So I I didn't really realize how private Ryan Reynolds really was until this. But I guess from what that photographer says, it was Blake's publicist that gave the photographer Ryan Reynolds' brother's address so they could go take photos of them. How crazy is that? Now, I know that happens in Hollywood. I think Kim Kardashian was accused of doing it when she was dating or went on a date with Nick Lachey. They went to a movie theater. They came out. There's paparazzi. And then they didn't date anymore. But how do you think Ryan Reynolds would feel about that? Like, you used me for publicity, basically, you know, unless Ryan Reynolds was in on it. But seems kind of shady. That was early in their relationship, before, I think it was before anybody knew, like anybody officially knew, because I think there was that period of break or divorce, and everybody, there was that rumor that Blake Lively stole Ryan Reynolds from Scarlett. I don't think I could say that, but um yeah, you know, but I just think maybe Blake is shady and Ryan is vindictive, or they just took their toxic personalities and they've melded them together and they are one person in two different bodies. But it should be really interesting to see if we can get any signs that Blake wants to settle. Maybe she should be like, oh, I want to play peace. Because also, I think this birthing video, now that we're live and I can talk to you guys, thank you so much for staying and talking to me. I also think that birthing video, they, in my opinion, can look at it in a different way. So I know that, to me, it seems like Blake Lively is kind of perversing this beautiful moment of birth and this beautiful, you know, beginning of life and everything, the sacred moment. But if you look at the rest of that video that is on Natasha Heath's Instagram, that 3-minute video of post birth, do you know what that is? It's them reciting the baby's first prayers, right? And they want to exploit that and perverse that. So to me, I feel like that's not lawfare. To me, inside, I feel like it's an attack on their personal culture, their religion, their spirituality. And Blake just wants to tear that up and stomp on it by demanding additional footage of this. And I really hope that if a jury sees that video, they bring that up. That was their most, they were right. That was their most sacred and most important moments. A baby's first prayer. Like, how would you feel if someone perversed a baby's baptism? And that's kind of how I feel. Like, they're just attacking that. And they just wanted to share a beautiful moment and a peaceful moment. And Blake Lively took it and stomped all over it. Um, blind item. Blind item was Blake was husband shopping and was turned down by Leonardo DiCaprio, so she went for RR. You know, I was actually looking up that relationship. And again, I was like, that has to be staged, because a lot of those photos that you see in the paparazzi, I feel like there was one day where the paparazzi were just constantly following them, because you can see them doing different activities in the same clothing. So it had to be from the same day. And you can tell that Leonardo DiCaprio has his cap turned down, right? Like, he doesn't want his picture taken, and Blake is just there with, her lovely self. So, yeah, maybe it's like a rumored Tom Cruise thing, where Katie Holmes supposedly or allegedly auditioned to be Tom Cruise's wife. Like, I really wonder if those type of things happen in Hollywood. But I think Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively do have an authentic relationship. I just think they're very perverse. Like, I would be very offended and probably embarrassed if I had to be in a conversation with Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds, just with their innuendos and their inside jokes. I would feel very uncomfortable, because I'd be like, are you talking about me? And second, I'm like, I don't get it. I don't talk like that. I'm not shocking like that. I'm very prudish. So even if you said, a phrase, without teeth, I would probably get very embarrassed, and I probably would be too afraid to say anything too. Like, hey, that made me uncomfortable. You know what I mean? How would you guys feel if you heard some of the statements Blake said in her text messages, or maybe even publicly? I'm going to read this next one. I don't think she really thought it was corn. She was brainstorming with Megan Mind Ryan and picked that snare, and it turned as a weapon and spinned it as evidence for her false SH allegation. True. You know what I think? I kind of think that, at least for the producer credit, she planned it. So she couldn't be a producer. Like, she wanted to do rhythm section or whatever, and that was horrible. So they gave her executive producer. But what she really wanted was that authorship, which she's, as alleged her way into. And I think once they said no to producer and yes to executive producer, that was the point that she could take advantage, because she knew some of the first scenes that were going to be shot were going to be the birthing scene. You know what I mean? Um, and yeah, I do think she was just brainstorming. I think this was just all planned. And we're going to find that out very quickly with all of those proper witnesses that Justin had. Because if you notice, Blake Lively, and everybody's covered this, so this is Ice-T, because if you notice, Blake Lively's initial disclosures are nothing but like hearsay, third person non-witnesses. Like Emily Blunt, who knows about the alleged smear campaign and damages and all that. What, because you chatted at the premiere? Weird, right? Like, all of these people are second, third hand. And if that's the case, that she's going around saying all this second and third hand, that's really in line with what she does. Because on Gossip Girl, didn't she do the same thing with Penn Badgley, right? She turned the entire cast on him, and then she figured out that she liked him. So she I think she said she did a reverse. I'm not sure. That was a very old video that I did not even pay attention to. But she obviously has a history. So if she has a history, is it really a smear campaign? Wouldn't it just be a discussion? Let's just call it a discussion amongst friends on how we really disagree with someone's outlook on things. Yeah, I heard about the makeup artist being fired about the SH because he applied lipstick with his finger, instead of a brush. I'm not sure if that was pre-Ryan Reynolds or if that was post-Ryan Reynolds. But yeah, I mean, I'm hoping Wayfair can throw that all that in as patterns of behavior. I mean, I guess it's as SH. I don't know. Maybe she's settled. I mean, if you're gonna do my makeup and make me look good, do whatever you need to do. Like honestly, you know, I got married. I had to do the whole big makeup thing and that airbrushing thing. I swear I felt like I was getting painted on, but they did what they had to do, you know. Yeah, I'm hoping they've compiled all of these. Um, but that Flossom interview, I hope that goes viral because that's gonna do some damage to them. And I'm actually from that interview, I'm actually kind of afraid for that photographer now because he put that out. So if he lives in Canada and the police and the mayor are in his pocket, how else can they like harass him? You know? They're gonna drive by his house. What are they gonna do? That photographer is really, really brave. And if you look at all of this, Wayfair is really, really brave because I don't know anyone who would attend a premiere after getting just threatened like that. Uh, Looking at the chat, I'm so sorry. ADD girl here. Whatever happened to that call from Taylor Swift's father? Why hasn't that been brought up again? So I'm not sure. And I think Taylor Swift might be in a little PR blitz herself with distraction with that criminal trial, that trespassing charge with the and I have fibromyalgia brain too. Was it the private investigator or the subpoena guy or whatever, that whole thing? um that's really interesting. I think that because Justin denied it, I think it's actually from Blake, might have something to do with it. But Taylor Swift's dad, I haven't heard anything. I did see a document that said proposed depositions, and Taylor Swift's deposition was supposed to be 9/29 in New York, I believe. But I don't know if that was a for sure thing. It's just been crickets from her side. I really do hope that they use her testimony or at least her text messages. Um, because I'm not sure if Taylor Swift is 100% innocent or 50% accomplice. What do you guys think about Taylor Swift? Because I would have to think for Blake Lively to make that threat, knowing that Taylor is a bigger star and can smoosh her anymore, something must have happened. And I'm not necessarily sure Taylor is 100% innocent. Do you believe they're not friends anymore? I do believe they're not friends anymore. So I know that there was a lot of hoopla about Taylor Swift's jewelry and Blake Lively's jewelry and whether or not um, Blake Lively was with Taylor Swift on her music video or not. When they were talking about the bread, this is what I think. Taylor Swift recorded her album like what, last year, a couple years, whatever, a year ago, right around the time that Blake Lively was doing her promotions and all that other stuff. And I've cross-referenced Blake Lively's shoes, and just forgive me, but Taylor Swift was wearing shoes on a date with Blake Lively, on a double date, and then a few photos later, Blake Lively was doing promo with Colleen Hoover, and Blake Lively was wearing the same shoes that Taylor Swift was wearing. So I think the whole album and the music video was shot around that. I think that they share stylists because their fashion, if you look at the video, fuzzy thingy jacket by Taylor Swift, Blake Lively, fuzzy thingy, whatever, jewelry similar. Um, Even the costume, that weird geometric brown pretty dress that Taylor Swift wears, um, Blake Lively wears it in a yellow without the dangly triangle things. I think that's where she got her nickname Big Bird, was from that outfit. So I think because everything was recorded when they were friends, it just makes it look like they're friends now, but they're not actually friends. Because I did hear reporting when Travis Kelce and his brother did that, hey, which movie should we watch? And Traveling Pants was on there. Um, which is kind of a punk out to Blake. And I laugh, but you gotta feel for Blake. Like, she just got punked. Like, hey, my friends, they're on my side. Wait, it was an episode from last year and I got punked. But I think all that came out again at bad timing at Blake's. But I can't imagine Blake Lively being friends with Taylor Swift, because if Taylor Swift knows that Blake Lively stole electronic communications and they talked about it or conversated about it, or Blake Lively told her plan, what if that implicates Taylor Swift in some weird conspiracy as well? Because now we have what? Blake Lively doing, or Jonesworks doing shady stuff, Blake Lively doing shady stuff, Leslie Sloan doing shady stuff, Leslie Sloan's staff might be doing shady stuff, Jonesworks staff might be doing shady stuff. Like, everybody's doing shady stuff. Taylor Swift isn't ready to retire yet. You know what I mean? Even though I think she wants to take a break, she wants a career. And I don't think she wants to go to jail either. Why do I have a feeling that they are still friends behind the scene? Like, all these news about their falling out, and they're just protecting TS. That could be true. They could still be friends. But also, what was interesting is their last outing together publicly was October 20s of 2024. I think 10, either 7 to 10 days before the metadata of the New York Times article came out. And I really want to say that maybe they went on a double date and Blake was like, hey, this article is going to come out, support me. And Taylor's like, oh, fuck no. I want to say that, but I'm not sure. But after that last outing in November, there was no sightings of Blake Lively at the New York or even at a Canada concert by Taylor Swift, which I thought was weird. But Ryan Reynolds had said, oh, Taylor Swift is great, blah, blah, blah. She's the godmother of kids, blah, blah, blah. So they were continuing to make statements in November after the last sighting in October, and then zilch in December, January, February, on and on. And then, you know, Blake Lively's just putting out a lot of PR like, I don't want this girl in my life. Next topic. What if she planned all this? Hugh Jackman. See, I think that Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively did the third or the hearsay thing. Like, hey, Hugh Jackman, this is my experience on set. Blah, 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 blah. And I think that's what happened. Like, I do think that they might have at least planned the SH claims at least by November, if not before. That way, when she went to the relaunch of the Traveling Pants, she could say, hey, I was SA'd on set, or not SA'd, SH on set, and I had this 17-point agreement. So, hey, America, Tamlin, and Amber, this is what I did for all of the good of the set and the world. And that's why they were able to make a statement saying that we support Blake and better like work conditions or whatever, because they had already been planted these seeds by Blake when the 17 point she planted crumbles. Yes, she did. Crumbles she can use as evidence for her false allegations. Yeah, I really do think that I honestly think that they didn't plan for this to continue the way it was. I think they planned to settle. Like, they couldn't get him on defamation, but anyone can file an SH claim, especially if it's like a closed set. You know what I'm saying? Less witnesses, less everybody. I'm gonna move my phone. Um, and so I think at that point they pretty much knew what they're doing from the start of that birthing video. Because is a camera operator really gonna like testify? And does Wafer really have all of this money to throw in all of these people to testify? I don't know. Maybe that's why Blake was mentioning the money part, you know? So thank you guys so much for joining my live. It is 3:30 here in the US. I'm honestly so glad you guys joined. Thank you so much for your support. If I ever get monetized, mark my words, I will be giving 50% to charity. And it's all thanks to Blake Lively's controversy. So let's thank her for being the most controversial person on the planet right now. Justice for Justin Baldoni. And let me know what else you guys want to hear. One last comment. She wants Wayfair to settle, but I think Sarah's told JP, if you won't settle, we're not going to settle. That is a good point. I think a jury trial was their plan all along, and I think Blake Lively's plan was to settle. And I can reference this to the Taylor Swift lyric, which is what I want to do. She took a violin to a gunfight. Oh, a tiny violin, whatever. And I think she's trapped in litigation. I honestly think she's trapped in litigation. And this is just her like, oh, you won't settle with me, then I'm going to sanction you for this birth video so that you can't testify about what was said or the content. I'm going to sanction, you know, for not having signal messages or whatever. I think she's just one trying to taint the jury, because I think that we're in jury tainting season, which might be another reason why Bryan Freedman was on TMZ. Um, we're all going to remember this from 4 months from now, because the trial is what for less than 4 months. Wait, December, January, February, March, less than 4 months from now. So all of this is going to be in everybody's minds. So yeah, that is a good point. Maybe Sarowitz does not want to settle. But I also think that all of them just want to clear their names. And, honestly, if you guys think about it, this lawsuit is going to change the PR and the news reporting industry forever. You know what I mean? Like, people are going to be held accountable for their actual lies. I know that the president of the United States wasn't successful for the New York Times, but I wholeheartedly believe that this is going to change the tides of PR and news reporting and the rumored smear campaigns. At least I hope. Indeed, this is such a landmark case, especially for Hollywood. Right. And another thing, I want to say that Blake Lively's attorneys, if they knew all of this shady stuff, they have to be on the shadier side. You know what I mean? Like, ethically, I don't know if I could be a lawyer and defend such negative, just means vampires. Let's just call them vampires. Yeah, I hope New York Times can be brought up again too. And in the TMZ video, they did say they wanted to reserve their rights to appeal, which is very smart. And I also think it's another legal tactic. And all of this is just like, hey, Blake Lively, you wanted this, you got it. You got court. We're gonna give you court forever. And I think the New York Times knows that they're in the wrong, and that's why they're racing for attorney's fees and final judgment, is because I think Wayfair has a lot of evidence that points that the to the New York Times that they knew that this was not true. Because if you look at Jenna's video and or Jenna's statement on Substack, there was two journalists that reached out to her. She gave them the DMs and they were not able to verify them. So I'm wondering who those journalists were and if they were with the New York Times and they were giving them again, maybe two, three times, and then they published it. Would they have a better, I'm not saying that's what happened. That's what I'm just theorizing, a tinfoil hat person here. You know what I mean? Because I can't imagine two you know, I want to know who those people are. Because they were put on the case using evidence outside the CRD docs. Yeah, and so if they subpoenaed Jenna Redfield and maybe they got the DMs and then she can tell them who they got it to. But then wouldn't that be covered under like journalistic privilege of like what Perez Hilton and Andy are going through right now? See, I don't know how that would work, but I mean, if like Lively can subpoena 107 content creators, why can't Wayfair subpoena Jenna Redfield? You know? But I do think that there's a lot of evidence that is outside the CRD that, you know, that they're going to find. It's all going to come out. And in the end, I think TMZ is right. Most of Blake's claims have been debunked, but no publishing or publisher is going to admit that because they would partly have to admit that they're lying, you know? Yeah, they did take Jen Abel's phone. What was that, like 8,000 pages or something? And then come through. So yeah, Megan Twohey does have a lot of liability on her part. I really want to reach out to her and ask her some questions. If I ever figure out how to do that, I totally will. I probably won't get any answers because I haven't gotten any answers from anybody. I reached out to Jennifer Abel. I did email Kevin Fritz's office that one video. Um, get no reply. I did try to talk to TMZ about their reporting. Again, no reply, but this interview basically answered a lot of my questions, and I'm very glad that it happened. And I think that they did it very smartly to insulate themselves from further sanctions from Blake because it's not Bryan Freedman saying it, it's actually Mark G and Harvey Levin saying the most devastating stuff. And, Bryan Freedman is just, you know, there giving an interview. So it was brilliant. All right, guys, I'm going to go to bed. I think by midnight, insomnia and anxiety is dying down, especially after that fire alarm. Thank you guys in the Netherlands for joining me. Again, like, subscribe, share. Um, you know, let me know what you want to hear next. And thank you for joining me. All right. Bye, guys. Oh, and if any one of you wants a fairy garden, I'll be happy to send one to you. All right. Bye, guys.